Hey everyone, welcome to Riverbend Therapy Chats. We're going to be talking today with Jessie Steffes about the rules to live by. Hey Jessie.
Hi. Hi.
Ooh, you're
Let me know if
outside.
my connection gets weird and I'll go inside, but it's so nice out. So
It is. It's a
I
lovely
thought
day.
maybe we could be outside.
Yeah. So today we're talking about rules and the rules that we live by. And I'm really excited to talk about this with you. I think that so many of us live by spoken and unspoken rules. And it's the unspoken rules that have the most power and authority in our lives because we don't name them. And so therefore we can't really question them or challenge them. So today as we talk,
Yeah.
I want to talk about how we begin to identify what those unspoken rules are, and then how we challenge them and how we decide what our rules to live by are.
Yeah. I really appreciate the idea and the differentiation between a spoken and unspoken rules, because this work of unlearning would be much easier if we only had spoken rules to contend with or
Mm-hmm.
challenge, confront. But in our work together and as we move through figuring out rules and spoken and unspoken, I'm realizing how much more insidious sometimes the unspoken rules are and how much more powerful they are.
Mm-hmm.
And as I think about that and the idea, like you said, of how do we start to uncover what the unspoken rules are, for me, I've found that I kind of stumble upon them when I do something almost as a knee-jerk reaction, or it feels like instinctual, and I'm like, why do I do that? And it was
Yeah.
such assuredness that I needed to do it. And usually in those cases it's like, oh, that's prompted by some unspoken rule, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those unspoken rules run the gamut, right, in our life. They're about relationships, they're about our assertiveness, they're about what it means to be a man or a woman, what it means to be gendered, what it means in our sexuality. There are all sorts of unspoken rules. What it means to be a mother, what it means to be an employee. And
Yeah.
so I think that you're right. For me, it's the same. It's when I do something that feels actually out of character with who I am or who I want to
Mm,
be that I have to really question, wait, why am I doing that thing, or why do I think that way?
right. I noticed that too when I try to put rules on other people. That became clear to me recently we're running this women's group, and it's phenomenal, and we're talking about womanhood and what it means to be a woman with other women. And I caught myself recently out in life having a judgment about another woman and some clothing that she was wearing. And I thought, why do I even feel that way? Because I don't actually feel that way. But I
Right.
was structured and, grown in this environment to think a certain way about that quickly. But it's not consistent with my character, who I want to be, because it felt so foreign. Like you said, it didn't feel like it was mine,
Yeah.
like it had
Yeah.
been put on me or given to me.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask you during this are, what are the emotional indicators that let you know that you're living or moving through an unspoken rule? And I love that you brought up that idea of judgment, because that is definitely one of my emotional indicators.
Mm,
When I feel
yeah.
judgment toward someone, I have to look back, turn the spotlight back on me and say, what is it that I think that I am required to do or feel or think in this space? And is that really true? But
Mm,
often when we have those indicators, we don't want to feel that way. And so we ignore it rather than getting curious about it.
yeah. that reminds me of shame. And when you ask about the indicators, the emotional indicators, I think shame is a primary one. And I don't like feeling shame, so I'll usually move away from that thing that's causing that feeling of shame
Hmm.
instead of being curious. Because if I'm curious, what if I find out more stuff that I don't like or that will feel that way for me? So
Right.
shame is almost like the bouncer at the door of growth. Like shame is like, don't come in, you might not like what you see. And I'm like,
Right.
ooh, maybe he's right. Maybe I
Right.
shouldn't
Right.
go. um when really inside there, I think, is ideas like, hey, this was a false rule in the first place, or something that worked in an earlier time, um, or maybe it was never actually yours, but you observed it enough in other people in your life that you
Hmm.
took it on. And
Hmm.
I notice a lot of my rules are assumed rules. Like I took them off the shelf because I thought that was mine to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And often I think, you know, like we have family rules. In my family, one of the rules was be a peacemaker. And
Mm,
each of my siblings took that differently, right? We all internalized that rule based on our experience and our personalities
mm-hmm.
differently. But for me, for a long time, I had internalized that rule to mean everybody else's emotional experience is more important than yours. And so make sure that yours is small.
Yeah.
And that was never what my parents intentionally handed me, but that was what I took. And that was how I learned to live that rule. Um, and that has been a hard rule to unlearn for me.
Yeah. Well, and I think the safety that comes in rules is important to honor and to think about. Is that I don't stumble upon rules because I like being ruled. I stumble upon them to try to make sense of my world and keep myself safe by any means necessary, which is what
Mm-hmm.
humans do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about rules for myself growing up, and it's interesting that we both decided to become counselors and had similar experiences of managing others' emotions,
Yeah.
right? And I'm sure there's a link there, but that's for a whole other day to talk about. But I had too an unspoken rule of, you can't break, you can't be broken, because there's so much emotional brokenness around you that you have to be the joy and the humor and the delight for. So there's not really any space or room for you to puddle or to
Mm-hmm.
melt. And no one ever said that to me. It actually came, those rules came in the form of compliments, like, you are so happy, you light up a room, you are my joy. And the
Yeah.
unspoken part was, I don't know what I'd do if you weren't those things, so don't. And that's the unspokenness, I think, that we kind of hold,
Yeah.
unintentionally.
Right. Right. So then how do we begin to challenge those? What are the steps that we take when we recognize, ooh, that's judgment? Or for me, the other one is envy. When I have a sense of
Mm.
envy, I have to again look and be curious, what is it? What need or what desire is being met in this person or for this person that I don't think I'm entitled to? Um,
Yeah.
and that is another, like, okay, like, what do I do then to challenge that and to change the rule for myself?
The when you ask that, the first thing that pops to my mind is a phrase I hear you say frequently, which is cultivate curiosity. And curiousness and curiosity are pure, they're clean endeavors. And when we're just curious, it's the openness to see what happens and the openness to just know more. And I love the idea of responding with curiosity, because I can be curious about a rule, and if I find out it doesn't come from a great place, I still have the self determination and right and agency to keep doing that rule if I'm not quite ready to get rid of it. And so I think when we talk about unlearning rules or letting go of rules, we talked recently, we don't have to burn the whole house down, but can we look at it and say, do I still want to choose this? And you get to choose it as long as you want. And I think that's maybe the important part for me, is the curiosity.
Mm-hmm. So curiosity first, discomfort second, right? anytime we step outside of those rules, it is going to be so uncomfortable. Jesse, your internet you're frozen on me. Can you hear me okay?
I'm going to go inside.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you, but I'm going to
All
move.
right. Okay. So curiosity first. Ask yourself, what is it that I feel like I'm not entitled to, or feel like I have to be doing in this situation that doesn't really feel authentic to myself? And then the second part is, okay, now am I ready to be uncomfortable?
Right.
I had an interesting experience not very many weeks ago where I had the opportunity to step way outside some of the rules that I had been given about what was appropriate, or like all the appropriate rules about who I should be in the world. And as I was nearing this experience, I had all of these feelings of like, no, don't do it, it's not right, don't do it, like all of these feelings that made me want to stay really small.
Yeah.
And I was, this close away from being so uncomfortable that I didn't do it. And then I asked myself, which cage am I trying to keep myself in right now? And when I did that, it was this freeing, like, oh yeah, that's it. That's the discomfort, is that I just don't know what it's going to be like when I step outside of the cage.
That discomfort resonates so deeply because we know the template of cages, right? We know what it feels like to be that perfect size of moderate, and to make sure we're not stepping on toes, and harmonizing and all those things. All of that is, as crappy as it feels, it's still familiar. And the fear of trying something different, it might not work out. And it might be really hard. And that's a very brave thing to do, to go into something knowing this could not have this, beautiful, picturesque, empowered woman, image on the other side. But it's still worth doing because I'm still worth growing. And that's a hard reminder to hold when we feel really scared.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that you attach to that there's an element of failure, right, in growth, right? That it is worth doing because I'm still worth growing, and if it doesn't turn out the way that I want it to, it was still worth doing.
Yes.
Because it promotes growth. It's moving me towards something.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking about, we talk about plants a lot, and some of my house plants, because I love them too hard and watered them too much, got some gnats. And I was like, why can't you just let me love you? But I've taken them outside. I've tried this spray. Like, I've tried everything. And what I have to do this weekend is take all my plants out of their pots and take all of them out of their soil. And I have to expose their roots, and I have to rinse off all the contaminated dirt, and I have to start from scratch. And I thought to myself today, I could just go to the store and buy some new house plants, but I love these plants, even though they're struggling right now, and they are worth growing. And so I'm going to do everything I can to keep them and put them in a place where they can keep growing, and then figure out what needs to shift from there. But the idea of like, I'm worth growth, they're worth growth, we are all worth growth, I think is really kind of guttural for me. And as you brought that up, I hadn't thought about it in that way, but the rules to me are what keep me from recognizing my worth in growing. They keep me small.
Yeah. Yeah.
As we said that, a little gnat just flew by my plate, and I'm losing my mind.
Just to remind you.
Yeah. Guess what?
Jesse, I always love doing these chats with you. For me, I'm taking away from this, like, we called it the rules to live by, but the truth is we all have to come up with our own. The rule to live by is to understand the unspoken and to set it aside, not burn the house down. Some of those you might want to take with you, but it's to understand the unspoken and then create and build the life you want with your own set of rules.
Yeah.
And that is what I take away from this conversation today is we all get to do that. We all have the agency, the will, the soul, the heart to create our own set of rules and the courage to move forward in those.
Yeah. You know, I'm thinking as you said that maybe my takeaway as I reflect on this is that it has taken really wonderful women in my life to help me challenge and look at the unknown or unspoken rules. And so I think my takeaway is the power of community around rewriting our rules
Yeah.
and
And which
what
I
that
think we have witnessed, right? With our
yes,
group, that we are witnessing that community and how it helps
right.
to rewrite and to reclaim. And that is, it's an amazing thing to witness.
It's breathtaking.
Yeah. Well, as always, thank you.
Thanks for
Those that are
having me.
watching, you can find out more about our groups that we provide at riverbendcolorado.com. You can fill out an interest form, even if the group isn't running right now or is currently running. We can always get in touch with you to let you know when we'll be starting again. So,
Yeah.
all right. Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah. Thanks, Brooke. I'll see you soon.
Okay. All right. Bye bye.
Bye.